7 p.m. in western North Carolina. The temperatures there are heading into the teens. Wind chill lower than that. And snow is on the ground in much of the mountains of North Carolina right now. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of American families sleeping in tents. I'll say it again. After losing their homes in Hurricane Helene, American families in western North Carolina are sleeping in tents as the snow comes down in western North Carolina. How many families? We don't know, because FEMA is doing an awfully lousy job of keeping count. We hear this story over and over and over again as we head towards the holidays. And we don't seem to understand, we can't understand, why it's not being covered on the national level more. We are tonight. And with that, we welcome you to the Ferris Network on television. And first tonight, this really is a national disgrace. We're going to tell you exactly what is happening on the ground in western North Carolina, and it should make you really angry. 67 days after Helene ravaged the state, 5,000 people are still living in emergency housing. At least 1,000 more rejected the offer from FEMA for a variety of reasons. And we simply don't know where thousands of people are sleeping tonight. We can only hope it's not outdoors. Our Brian Enton went to western North Carolina to see what life really looks like for so many.
What about the people in the tents? What are they going to do?
It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. We got to get those folks out of those tents and in those FEMA campers. How's it going to happen?
I had to rent this so that we would even be able to use the bathroom.
So you have to pay for that yourself?
Yes. Yeah, it's $130 a month to rent one.
There's times we don't get fresh meat because there's no way to keep it cold. Because you got to choose between heating the house with the generator, especially the ones who have kids, and keeping the food cold.
Temperatures are going to start getting in the 30s at night. We're afraid of more hypothermia, folks that are living in the mountains, and there's probably going to be more bodies laying around if we don't start getting these people in some level of temporary housing.
Yeah, speaking of that temporary housing, 42,000 people have visited one of 18 disaster recovery centers. 42,000 people need help. Blue Ridge Public Radio from North Carolina reports a whopping, and listen to this number, 14 families have a mobile home or travel trailer from FEMA. 14. Evidently, FEMA says they don't want to place the structures in a landslide or flood zone, which makes it awfully difficult to provide housing for people who lost their homes in floods. No indication of another hurricane coming, but FEMA just can't seem to break their rules. This isn't just about the people who lost their homes. Thousands more lost their livelihoods. They can't afford to pay rent. Like this woman who now considers herself lucky to be living in a hotel while the FEMA money continues.
We need as much help as we can possibly get, or, a house to rent or something, if anybody has one. And I deeply appreciate it.
That story plays out over and over and over again. In Buncombe County in particular, the unemployment rate quadrupled to 8.8%. An estimated 13,000 people don't have a job now. That's rural North Carolina. Tourism makes up much of the industry there. So Christmas presents are the last thing on anybody's mind. So far, the federal government has gone through $262 million trying to help the families affected by the storm. That is less than 1% of FEMA's $20 billion budget, and FEMA now says they are out of money. Today, President Biden is in Africa, promising $1 billion in aid for natural disasters in Africa.
Africa's success is and will be the world's success. That I said at the United States U.S.-Africa Summit, the United States is all in on Africa's future.
And that's important because China is trying to go all in on Africa's future as well. But our future, the future of those families here at home, that matters too. That's something President Biden has largely forgotten about. Yesterday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced $725 million in additional aid to Ukraine. So yes, the government should be able to walk and chew gum. It should be able to help the people in North Carolina and be leaders around the world. That's what America does. But the government's inability to do that is shameful. Maybe it's not an inability, it's sort of a lack of willpower. So let's think about that combined $1.725 billion given to African countries and Ukraine this week. That would buy 20,000 plus RVs or mobile homes at $75,000 apiece. Maybe if you bought 20,000, most of them are made in America. That'd be money well spent here at home by the government, by our tax dollars. Perhaps even at 20,000, FEMA could get a bulk discount. And sure, the quick response to this point that I just made is that the money being sent abroad can't just be redirected, very fancy government word, with a snap of the fingers. It's more complicated than that, the bureaucrats will say. And yes, it is a little bit more complicated. There's truth to that. But think about the folks living in Western North Carolina in tents right now. You hear $1 billion is going to Africa, and you're living in a tent. Perception is reality. Our Brian Enton showed that FEMA is in North Carolina. They're there. They have got a fabulous FEMA compound. But they are totally unresponsive to thousands of Americans on the verge of freezing to death and living in tents. And yes, Republicans love to blame Joe Biden for the suffering of poor, rural whites in North Carolina. And yes, there was a FEMA policy, at least in one small part, to not go visit any home that had a Trump sign. But it's not just Democrats holding things up. The White House asked Congress for an additional $100 billion in disaster relief. Why they need $100 billion when just $2 billion would buy 20,000 trailers, you can decide. But lawmakers were set to vote on the matter this week. They're not going to. Because House Republicans want to use it as leverage. They want to use the people of North Carolina as leverage before Christmas during a debate over a government shutdown. That is not just us saying it, but it's Republican Senator Tom Tillis, among others. Their joint letter to Senate leadership reads, in part, our constituents need immediate help as they work to rebuild their homes and communities we have all delayed too long already. So here's where we at. Just 3 weeks and a couple days before Christmas. America can move the most sophisticated weapon systems in the world overnight to Poland and then into Ukraine. But somehow, FEMA can't go to Camping World and buy trailers for Americans living in tents. It's tough to hear. We can move the most sophisticated weapon systems in the world overnight to Poland, and somehow we cannot help the people living just a couple of 100 miles from the bases where those weapons come from. We begin tonight with Bill St. Pierre, who's been on the ground helping those affected, and Mayor Michael Sobel from Black Mountain, North Carolina. Gentlemen, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Bill, there was just a tweet that got put out by FEMA, helpfully talking about how great they've been and how many people they are helping. As you've been on the ground with folks, do you see that FEMA has been doing enough?
I haven't seen FEMA do anything since I've been down there. I've seen their vehicles. I've seen their flags flying. The amount of families that I've been in contact with, working with, I have not seen FEMA anywhere.
Tell me some of the stories of the families that have affected you the most.
Well, I can go forever. One family, she grew up in this home. Her great grandfather built it. It flooded, kind of knocked it off the foundation a little bit. But they basically lost everything in their 70s. She has stage 4 cancer. They take care of their Shriner grandson. He is a 40-year vet, and they have nothing. And they were given a little bit of FEMA money, but it's not even going to pay for the cleanup. There was a guy that was helping me unload my trailer a couple weeks ago down in Jefferson, North Carolina. He was working at a distribution center. And he had cancer, and he was helping me unload the trailer, lost his mobile home, taking care of his 7-year-old daughter. And I called him the other day, and his camper just burned down because he's trying to keep it warm. So I could go on for hours.
Yeah.
The people that I've talked to, the people that I've seen, the look in their eyes, the devastation that they're going through. This isn't the American way. And I finally had to start doing something. I had to start using my platform, my Facebook, my social media, like all the other people are down there, because nobody else is helping. So we're going to do it the way we're doing it, raising money and make this happen.
And that's the American way, right? The worst times bring out the best sometimes, oftentimes in America. Mayor, I know it's difficult as a local official to be caught between wanting help from your community, from FEMA, and then trying to help the folks who are so desperate that you represent. Help us understand this giant disconnect between what we hear that FEMA is doing a great job and they're everywhere and these stories that are being told and we have every reason to believe are true.
Well, I have to challenge St. Pierre. There's no question that FEMA has not done as much as what people want. However, FEMA is not Jesus Christ. We can't expect miracles overnight. I know that in the town of Black Mountain, FEMA has done a damn good job. They have given people, they have helped people. Have they completely made everyone whole? Absolutely not.
But there's people living in tents, Mayor.
You've got to understand that it takes a while to do this.
67 days and people are still living in tents. We have video of the FEMA compound. They seem to be doing pretty well. I'm just trying to figure out what people should expect. And it doesn't seem 67 days is too long to expect a trailer that the government has money for, is it?
Well, you said that they should be able to buy 20,000 trailers. I own trailer parks. I know what trailers are like. Do you realize how long it would take to get 20,000 trailers?
It would take a while.
There's
That's
not
fair.
20,000 trailers out there. Now, that would be a good thing. There's no question it would be good. It'd be good for them to bring them in. But for right now, they don't have the resource. They've got the resources, the money to buy them. But the trailers are not available. People are living in tents. Yes, they are. And I'm sorry. But let's look at the other side of it. Our community has stepped out and helped so many people. There are churches around in here.
That's what's incredible, right? Is the church communities, the faith communities that are stepping up. And I think there's a lot of people. We see this story, Bill. I know you've seen this story as well of churches going out and buying trailers at Camping World. And you're right, 20,000 may be a big number to buy, but there's certainly 1,000 or so around between Camping World and RV Center and everything else to go buy, Bill. And I guess help me understand, when you show up at with these families to go help, do they tell you they've met with FEMA and they just aren't getting the help? Or FEMA says, hey, we don't have trailers right now? Help us understand why people are living in tents that you've talked to.
Well, again, I understand FEMA's there. I understand that they're probably doing all they can, but it ain't enough. It's not enough when people like me have to shut down my business and go down there with my own funds, my own equipment, and make all this happen. Yes, FEMA's there. Okay, but I haven't seen them. Everybody that I've talked to hasn't seen them. I understand this is a major disaster, but there's better ways to take care of this. There's better ways to move in there and at least get all the roads open. Now, VDOT, the Department of Motor Transportation down there, they have been working 7 days a week getting these roads open. There's been companies coming out of West Virginia, the coal miners, to build these roads in. And these are the things that need to happen and keep happening. But it looks to me like if we're going to count on FEMA, it's going to be 15 years before these people can even live in a cabin, because I've got one down there right now trying to be built, and they've waited 2 weeks to get an approval stamp on a 16 by 24 building that they can build, and they can move them and their 3 daughters into temporarily till they get their house constructed. Now, I understand, all these people that say that they're down there and the government's pitching in, they probably are. But $200 million isn't going to touch this one. I've raised over $500,000 for these people, and it's not my job to do that. But I'm going down there.
No, it's not your job, Bill. But without people like you, America wouldn't be what it is. You're the best we have.
It wouldn't be anything. It wouldn't be anything. And that's the American dream was just washed away in one day down there for thousands of people. Michael, and if we're going to sit there and just watch them stay in tents and just wait for FEMA, then this country needs to come up with a lot better system than what we're working on right now.
I don't think anybody would argue we need a lot of better systems in a lot of ways. Mayor, put a bow on this for us, because we're heading into winter. It's going to get worse in terms of the weather and in terms of being able to get a permit or rebuild or anything else. Are some of these families going to have to just leave with nothing? And I'm wondering how communities that are based on tourism have any shot come summer at this rate.
Well, when you start thinking about the tourism industry, we might as well just accept the fact that we've just been knocked in the head. That's out. What we got to think about is how to deal with the people and get them into someplace warm for the wintertime. Going in with relatives, going into shelters. We have shelters in Black Mountain all the time. For lower than 40 degrees, purple flag goes up, come in and stay here. So maybe there's not enough around, but we need to be providing more of those. And I just want to say real quick, you talk about a bow, put a bow on this. After my daughter went ahead and rescued a dog the night of the hurricane, and then she dried it off, fed it. The next morning she wakes up, this dog is on the sofa giving birth to a puppy. And the next thing, there's another puppy. And 15 minutes later, there's 6 puppies. So there is a bow to this crisis.
Well, I would add to that, and I'm sure you'd agree, there's people like Bill as well, who have stepped up.
Absolutely.
$500,000 raised.
For what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, not only admire, but we're thankful. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. America needs more people with passion like you. Things might get done that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Republicans in Congress have something in common with Ozempic. What exactly it is and why it will lead directly to chaos after the first of the year. You've heard it over and over again for the past 4 weeks. Republicans have a mandate, and they are not tired of winning. They'll tell you they control the House, the Senate, and the White House. But coming up, the House could only have a 1-seat majority for Republicans, not exactly an overwhelming mandate. There's still one district that hasn't tallied all of its votes. In California, Republican incumbent John Duarte and Democrat Adam Gray are currently tied in the polls. Gray leads by less than 200 votes. 1% of the ballots still need to be counted. Somehow, California and all those tech billionaires in Silicon Valley can't figure out how to count ballots a month later, but that's a different story. So there's that seat. Matt Gaetz resigned from Congress after originally being picked for Attorney General. Congressman Elise Stefanik, Congressman Michael Waltz were tapped for Trump's cabinet. Stefanik for Ambassador to the UN. Waltz, National Security Advisor. So those seats are up in deeply red districts. Republicans are almost certain to refill them. The first few months of the year will make it almost impossible for Republicans to pass anything because it will only take one Republican to object. We will remind you they couldn't get their act together with the 7-seat majority in the last Congress. We can guess all the fun that will happen when they have just a 1-seat majority. Phil Wegman, Real Clear Politics White House correspondent. Mariana Sotomayor, Washington Post congressional reporter covering the House. Welcome to both of you. Mariana, start with you on this. How worried are Republicans about this?
Oh, very worried. I mean, listen, they're going to tell you all that you just said. We're united. We're hopeful that we can get things done. We all have the same policy goals. But the devil is absolutely in the details, and they know that, because what has it been the last several months? We have seen just how that thin majority, it took a whole week to get Speaker Kevin McCarthy, took 10 months until we saw Republicans for the first time get rid of a speaker, only for 6 months later try again to get rid of Speaker Mike Johnson, not to mention the policy fights that it took for Republicans to actually try and compromise amongst themselves. And because they couldn't, that's why Republican speakers, as much as they did not want to work with Democrats, had to do that to fund the government, to get a number of other priorities.
Now, some could argue that that would be a good thing, right? That it would require compromise and that it would require some kind of legislation that's in the middle where America would like it to be. A little bit of reaction from Mike Johnson, the speaker, among others, to this. Take a listen.
But every single vote will count, because if someone gets ill or has a car accident or a late flight on their plane, that it affects the votes on the floor.
We should have a major majority, a super majority, but we don't. And we don't have that, I think, is based on the performance of this Congress. This Congress has had a lot of failures.
You can see his resolve already and how quickly he's making really good, smart picks. I know he's already pulled a few really talented people out of the House.
So that's Steve Scalise talking about Donald Trump's resolve. The answer from Team Trump would be, look, Donald Trump has such a mandate and controls the Republican caucus with an iron fist. Therefore, this isn't a problem. They can get anything rammed through, Phil. Does that seem to be playing out the way Trump wants it to?
Maybe. I mean, look, the cost of getting the very best people into Donald Trump's cabinet is being paid right now by Speaker Mike Johnson. He's watching his majority dwindle. And what does that mean? It means that during these first 100 days, if potentially we do have a majority among Republicans of 1 or 2 votes, that the flanks are going to be empowered. With a smaller majority, that means that the Freedom Caucus has more cards to play, and so do some of the senators.
Well, everybody has a veto, right?
Exactly, everybody, not just those 2. And so Johnson's good at herding cats, but we'll see if he's able to thread this very precise needle.
I mean, there you have to herd every cat, right? You can't have any strays.
And President Trump as well, right? Because Johnson is going to have to. He has a pretty good relationship with Trump. But Trump, where is he going to fall on certain policy debates? A lot of those hardliners have been staunch Trump allies from the beginning. Their argument for holding the line has been, well, this is what MAGA wants. But how is Johnson going to protect his already delicate majority when he has to protect the majority makers, those moderate Republicans?
Does it really matter in the first 100 days?
In some ways it could, right? I mean, when I've been talking to a number of leadership aides, they're talking about how the first 100 days are going to be a lot of that legislation negotiations. We've been hearing a lot about what reconciliation, this big package of bills, probably border security, energy,
tax cuts,
whole tax cuts,
so all of
raising
these
the debt
MAGA, all of these sort of MAGA agenda items are in peril.
Right. And at least for right now, a lot of House Republicans talking about, well, we're going to have to wait until April when those 2 Florida seats are going to get filled to actually put things on the floor. But even then, you're only going to have a 3-vote majority. You have to make sure all Republicans basically are on the same page on policy.
Phil, are we seeing, as Trump is building out his cabinet, this sort of fairly unique combination of people? A Soros hedge fund manager, a former Democratic congresswoman, RFK Jr., all the way to Marco Rubio. Does this signal that Donald Trump may be willing to make deals across the aisle with Democrats?
He certainly came into office last time around willing to make deals. Remember the sit-down he had with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. That bipartisan era of good feeling didn't last very long. I think what you see instead is that Donald Trump is at the head of a realignment that he has created. He was brought into office by a lot of low-propensity voters that he turned out, not traditional Republicans. And so this time around, when he's not as much of a political novice, he's just going with his people. The question that I have, though, moving forward, is does that coalition stay together? Could you have an RFK Jr., someone who is against all things big, like Wall Street, ag, you name it? Can they make common cause with someone like Howard Lutnick, who's a creature of Wall Street, right? Does this last much longer after Donald Trump? And can he actually get anything done?
And he's only a one-term president, right?
Exactly.
And everybody knows that there are no coattails come 2028. Thank you both. Fascinating. Appreciate it. Let's talk about the guy who currently occupies the Oval Office, Joe Biden. He's smiling with Donald Trump, giving $1 billion in aid to Africa as people freeze in North Carolina. And he's also pardoned his son. Is there anything else Biden can do to sink Democrats in his last 60 days? What Democrats are worried about when we come back. Democrats cannot decide if Joe Biden pardoning his son is a good thing or a bad thing. Like almost everything right now, Democrats are fighting amongst themselves. But they are united in fear over what Joe Biden might do in his last 50 days as president. Biden's already been seen smiling with Trump in the Oval Office, pushing through massively unpopular funding giving more than $1 billion in humanitarian aid to Africa, as we told you, while people in North Carolina sleep in tents. Time and time again, Joe Biden's legacy has gotten in the way of what's good for his party. Even Pod Save America, which is about as pro-Democrat as you get, admits Joe Biden is what's gotten us to where we are today.
His ego, again and again, has gotten in the way. And when push comes to shove, it's like, well, I'm going to do what's good I'm going to run for president again, even though it's crazy to do that. And I shouldn't do it and blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do it, and now we're all here.
Joining us now, with us here, Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips, who warned about this a while ago, said Joe Biden shouldn't run almost a year before the debate and challenged Joe Biden in the primary. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you. Is there a danger for Democrats and for the Democratic brand with what Joe Biden's going to do in the next 49 days?
Well, Leland, I think most of the damage has been done. Lost election, we got crushed. The pardoning of his son Hunter, a tragic, I think, moment in American political history. We can all relate to having a child that we want to protect. Too many American families can relate to how addiction can destroy people and families. But none of us, not one of us, other than one, can relate to the power to actually pardon our children. And that's what makes the United States so different than other countries. I'm afraid we're taking some really dark turns, Leland. Donald Trump abused pardons. Joe Biden, I believe, has now done the same. And frankly, most presidents do. And I think it's time for some reform. And as for the coming weeks before the inauguration, look, is there a risk? Yes. But there's also an opportunity for Joe Biden to do some things, make some statements, maybe even make some apologies for his missteps that would help the Democratic brand and party as we proceed to the midterms.
You want to put bets on that happening?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Jon Stewart has brought out, I think, what's probably the worst part for Democrats of what Joe Biden's pardoning of his son did. And there's more to it wrapped up in this. Take a listen.
Rules, loopholes, and norms. The distance between the systems Democrats say they are revering and the one that they're using when they need to is why people think it's rigged. Use the rules, use the loopholes, the norms, but also use it to help the people, not just those people related to you.
All right, so there it is. If one thing came from this election, it was throw all the bums out, right? It was an anti-establishment election as much as it was an anti-the Democratic Party election. Why are Democrats not taking this opportunity to start attacking the establishment rather than defending it?
Well, because then the establishment would be attacking itself. And I happen to be affiliated with a party right now that prioritizes tenure, not talent, that wants to protect its power and prestige and proximity to power. And I think it's tragic. Next week, my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus that were elected to the next Congress will start voting on committee ranking members, essentially the Democratic leaders on committees. And we might see as early as next week whether or not the Democratic caucus has taken this to heart and is ready for generational change and to change the culture and the ethos of a party and a caucus that I think has really lost its way, as evidenced by this wipeout in the last election.
One thing among the many things I've admired about you is your willingness to, number one, to tell the truth, but it's also how many Democrats talk to you. You don't need to share names with us, but have you seen and can you share with us any anecdotes that give you hope that that's actually going to happen?
I've had a lot of conversations, Leland. A lot have reached out to me. Beginning the night of June 27th with the disastrous debate by Joe Biden, people started recognizing that maybe I was right, although I'm not trying to say that too much publicly. And, of course, in the last few weeks, as we recognize that we are essentially blocking talented, competent next-generation members of our caucus from ascending to leadership positions, people who get it, who understand our need to reconnect with rural America, our need to reconnect with working-class Americans, and frankly, to bring some energy and some innovation and next-generation thinking to a caucus that is still a little bit mired in the past. I'm getting a lot of that reach out. And now I was liberated before, even though I had something to lose. Now, in just a few weeks, I will be a private citizen once again and free to share the truth, shine light on corruption. And by the way, Leland, the Biden pardon was not a good look. But the way the Democratic Party conducted that primary in which I competed, suppressing competition, taking names off ballots, refusing to have debate, this is a pattern. And I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to shine light on it because that is the best disinfectant. And hopefully the better angels in my party will prevail and show a little bit of courage because this is a time for it.
Very, very well said. Courage is something that is oddly missing in Washington. I think there was a movie about that with the yellow brick road. Ways and Means Democrats, I'm just going to give you the last 30 seconds on this. I don't know if you saw this tweet. Ways and Means Democrats tweeted out, this is the committee that controls spending for Democrats, a USA Today article, shoppers spent a record $10.8 billion online on Black Friday, up next Cyber Monday. Ways and Means Democrats tweet the article out. And here we were thinking y'all couldn't afford eggs. Do people get fired for stuff like this?
Leland, first of all, it's the first I'm hearing of this, and it sounds like it came from the Onion. But if not, well, hey, I'll tell everybody watching another little truth here. The fact of the matter is, most members of Congress, they don't do their own tweets, they don't do their own statements, they don't do their own social media posts. So rest assured, that came from a staff member, probably without the approval of Richie Neal, of course, the committee chair, but nonetheless. That's another big disconnect and transparency. You're not actually getting the messages from the people that you think you are. But that's appalling if that's what they tweeted.
Oh, there's the screenshot. We'll see what the fallout is. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Amazing. Anytime, Leland. Have a good night.
Thank you. We talked about this in War Notes today. That's our newsletter. Comes out every day, 4:05 Eastern. Gives you our look at the most important stories of the day. Warnotes.com to subscribe for free. You can also connect with us on social media at Leland Vittert, Instagram, and that thing that used to be called Twitter. Something we'll talk about tomorrow is the sudden departure of Trump's pick to run the DEA. Florida Sheriff Chad Cronster withdrew his nomination for the position just 3 days after the president-elect announced his selection. Cronster cited a lack of experience and the overall gravity of the job, but online speculation ran rampant that it was the sheriff's enforcement of COVID lockdowns back in 2020 that sunk his nomination. There is more to this story. We'll tell you what it is tomorrow. Granola moms sound like hippies, and because they are, who only feed their kids raw milk, and that's true for some. How they also became huge Trump supporters, or supporters of one of Trump's biggest supporters. That shift when we come back. Hearings. He's going to have an unusual constituency behind him when he comes before the Senate. You might call them granola moms or crunchy moms. Many don't vaccinate their kids or feed them anything but the cleanest, most organic foods. Conventional wisdom would tell you such people are highly educated, white suburban moms, a.k.a. Kamala Harris supporters. Except they love Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Just check them out on TikTok.
I sleep like a baby, walking on sunshine. Whoa, I sleep like a baby. Is it you say daddy's home for me? I sleep like a baby. I never show up late.
So you had to read the words on the screen, but they were talking about how happy they were and how well they were sleeping now that RFK Jr. will be in office. Two moms who joined the social media trend, Jessica Brownsberger, Kate Bevington, are with us now. Jessica, start with you. Is this about Donald Trump and his policies, or is this specific to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
This is specifically to RFK Jr.'s policies.
Okay. Keep going.
I don't think I would have known much about RFK Jr.'s policies until he endorsed Donald Trump. And that's really when I started looking into the things he was planning on doing or advocating for.
Fascinating. Is that so? Are you supporting him because he supports Donald Trump, or in spite of him supporting Donald Trump?
I think I would have supported him either way, but once he did endorse Donald Trump, I was way more supportive of RFK's policies and probably some of Trump's, in my opinion.
Katie, is it fair to make this connection, right? Granola, crunchy, you'd think liberal who mask their kids all the time and, still wear masks themselves. Is that a correct political linkage to ultra-liberal, and note the irony of supporting RFK who supported Donald Trump?
I think it's actually quite the opposite. Most crunchy moms that I know were very anti-mask, anti-vaccine, still feeding their kids very organic, very clean foods. Fascinating. Okay. So you think about where this is headed, right? Confirmation hearings, RFK Jr. is up. The rest of the media has focused almost exclusively on his vaccine skepticism. Take a listen.
Putting RFK Jr. in charge of that would be beyond dangerous. It would be medical malpractice on a mass scale.
Somebody said to me today, I can't think of any single individual who'd be more damaging to public health than RFK.
RFK Jr. personally lobbied the governor of Samoa, telling the governor that vaccination was what caused the spread of measles, not what needed to be done to stop the spread of it.
So, Jessica, understandably, there's a lot of criticism, questions about RFK when it comes to vaccines. But some of this other stuff that he talks about, the fact that the obesity rate has gone up by a third in just 20 years in America, that public health keeps getting worse, but the people who are in charge of public health have their jobs and keep getting more money. Why isn't that talked about, you think?
I think there's a big gap between my parents' generation and RFK's generation and our children's generation today with chronic illnesses and disease. And I think the two biggest factors in that have been the increase in vaccination for children and the foods and the chemicals and additives in our processed foods today. And I just don't think that it has been widely as talked about until RFK brought it to people's attention.
No, he's brought it. It's now a thing. Katie, I'm always an old fan of that line. It's not the answer, the questions that get us in trouble, but the answers. Why is asking these questions, as you all are, so demonized, do you think?
I think because it goes against what we're always taught. Growing up, you go to school, you do what you're taught. You go to college, you do what you're taught. And you're constantly given instructions on how to live your life, what to do. And when you question it, it's heavily demonized. They don't want you to ask questions. And honestly, I think it's because there's a lot of stuff that they don't want us to find.
You can be a journalist as well with that kind of attitude. It's great. Jessica, Katie, thank you. Come back and talk to us. Donald Trump made massive gains with voters in New York City, a city that is now prosecuting a Good Samaritan for rushing to the aid of terrified subway riders. How those two things have to be connected.
Well, cancel me, because I'm going to protect the people of this city. And if you come into this country, in this city, and think you're going to harm innocent New Yorkers and innocent migrants and asylum seekers, this is not the mayor you want to be in the city under.
Of New York City, the courthouse there. Jurors will be back in the morning to continue their deliberations in the Daniel Penny trial. You may remember him, the New York prosecutor charged him with manslaughter. Penny became a hero to many for restraining a fellow subway rider. Jordan Neely was threatening passengers in the train car. Neely died in the scuffle. Today in court, the assistant district attorney argued Penny used too much force. It's the Daniel Penny case, but it's become a Rorschach test for how we view the world. Republican councilwoman from Northeast Queens, Vicky Palladino, who wrote in part, I saw a despicable excuse for a DA stand up in front of a court and flagrantly lie for no other reason but to destroy the life of a good man for the crime of protecting a train full of people from a deranged, violent bum. Elon Musk got in on it, responded, wow, that's terrible. Vicky Palladino is with us now. Vicky, how did this case become a statement on politics in America?
Well, you saw an innocent guy on a train. The crime rate, is out of control. We all know now when you go into a subway car, you're taking your life into your own hands because of the mental illness, the drug addiction, and things like that. and you put a lunatic on a subway car, close him in, 30 other people, he goes nuts. You see a good Samaritan, you refer to him as I do, Daniel Penny, as a hero, and he stepped up to the plate, and he didn't have to do that. He could have kept his earbuds in and not did a thing. Instead, he exercised his experience as a Marine. Now, everybody's talking about the chokehold. You know, make no mistake here. This man was restraining a maniac on our trains. And this guy should be awarded a Medal of Honor for stepping up as he did, and only to be prosecuted later on now for manslaughter. This happened, he was 24
Vicki,
years old.
I want to just stop you for 1 second, because you think about Jordan Neely, who had a lot of issues, schizophrenia, K2 synthetic drugs in his system, had a violent past. Did he deserve to die that day? How do we square that circle?
First of all, he died because he was ill. He was under the influence. Restraining him is not what killed him. Now, when you put somebody into a chokehold, which is what I learned in closing arguments yesterday, in order to kill them, you have to hit the carotid artery as well as the jugular. He did not do that. He just held him in place. And if you notice, there's two other men there as well holding down Neely. Neely, who has a rap sheet as long as my arm or your arm. And they did their due diligence to do that. Those two other men were cowards. They did not step up to the plate as far as going forward to protect Daniel Penny and really tell the truth about what happened on that side of what took place that night.
Vicki, we got to run, but thank you. We're going to have you back when the verdict comes down. We've got the jury in deliberations tomorrow, coverage all day on NewsNation. Vicki, thank you very much. You're going to hear a lot about Donald Trump's cabinet and why things are happening. We have some insight on that. That's tomorrow. Here's Chris.